So it's not even 5 minutes after I just did that intro. They're firing flashbangs over there. So again, the curfew hasn't even hit yet, but the police are starting to shoot rubber bullets and flashbangs. People are already sort of scattering. I think let's go try to check it out. So you can see people are holding their hands up and they're literally chanting peaceful protest. I haven't seen any violence out here. It's all coming from the police. There's what looks like an armored car back there. Now we have mounted police gathering, and again, it is 6:35. The curfew has not hit yet. This is a completely lawful demonstration.
Oh no. Here they come. Go.
The police have been indiscriminate in their violence against protesters. Their main tactic has been firing so-called rubber bullets at people, projectiles that have a slightly foamy tip but travel at hundreds of miles an hour, and being fired at people at point-blank range. These projectiles have been widely referred to as non-lethals, but they've killed people in the past. Numerous videos have shown police firing these rubber bullets at protesters, bystanders, and journalists alike, which I can personally attest to. Here they shot a rubber bullet at me, and it just barely missed my head, hitting a metal bar above me. The brutal repression we've seen over the last week is part of a deliberate plan from the Trump administration to impose a form of military rule in America's streets. The Trump administration is arguing that it has the right to deploy the military anywhere in the country to quell protests, while California Governor Gavin Newsom, joined by Democratic governors around the country, insists that the president needs permission from governors before deploying the military to their state, and that local law enforcement is able to handle, i.e. repress, the protests by themselves. Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom's pledge to repress the protests is an attempt to prove that they don't need the National Guard to control the protests, that local and state law enforcement agencies are capable of brutalizing protesters into submission on their own without help from Trump. This is why the vast majority of violence against protesters in Los Angeles is actually coming from state and local law enforcement agencies under the control of California's Democrats like Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom. This begs the question, what part of this is standing up to Trump? If Democrats really wanted to oppose Trump, shouldn't they start by protecting the immigrant communities that Trump is targeting? How does brutalizing the people protesting Trump's policies help stop Donald Trump? Well, it's clear that Donald Trump is trying to provoke chaos by deploying the National Guard. The Democrats have actually accelerated that dynamic by unleashing state and local law enforcement on the protesters. For decades, U.S. geopolitical and economic power rested firmly on America's role as the world's leading military superpower. Under the guise of fighting communism or terrorism, the U.S. military marched around the world, toppling governments and replacing them with pro-American puppets who would sell off their country's labor and resources to American corporations and business tycoons. America's ability to wage these imperial wars was largely made possible by its arms manufacturing industry, which is the largest in the world by far. But the U.S.'s waning dominance following its disastrous attempts at occupying Iraq and Afghanistan seriously undermined the U.S.'s ability to wage ground invasions in foreign countries. And with inequality and social unrest increasing in the wake of the financial crisis and the election of Donald Trump, the surplus of weapons that America had flooded the world with found a new purpose: suppressing protests on American streets. In addition to the astronomical rise of local police budgets, law enforcement agencies also increasingly absorbed the surplus weaponry no longer being used by the military for free through a program called the 1033 program. The 1033 program started during the height of the war on drugs, but you really start to see the use of this program skyrocket at the beginning of the 2010s when the US began winding down its military presence in Iraq. All of that equipment, which was designed to fight wars, was all of a sudden transferred to local police departments to police Americans. And we're not just talking about assault rifles and bulletproof vests. We're talking armored vehicles, tanks, helicopters, grenade launchers, all given to your local police department for zero cost. One of the most controversial transfers was the Mine-Resistant Ambush Protective Vehicle, or MRAP, which was originally designed to protect soldiers in Iraq from IEDs. Hundreds of MRAPs and similar armored vehicles were transferred to police in the United States throughout the 2010s and have been deployed to protests in the United States. When the military recruits people, it tells them they're going to fight a foreign enemy. So when you arm and dress police officers like soldiers, not only does the public begin to understand them more as an occupying army being deployed against them, it's now the logic of the police training itself, that the American public asserting its constitutional rights is actually an enemy force. Donald Trump obviously has a personal agenda to establish a new form of right-wing dictatorship, staging military protests on his birthday and promising to crush all dissent with the military. But he's also a manifestation of what the system and both major parties have produced. After all, it's Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass's cops brutalizing protesters here in LA. It was Joe Biden celebrating the cops sent in to beat up college students for protesting the genocide in Palestine. It was the Obama government that federally coordinated the crackdown of militarized police forces in Ferguson, Missouri, Standing Rock, and Occupy Wall Street. The conservatives cheering on the crackdown against the anti-ICE protests have for years presented themselves as defenders of free speech and against federal overreach. But now what they're normalizing with these kinds of militarized responses is that when anyone protests or when anyone criticizes the government, it's fine to meet them with this kind of brutal force. So this affects all of us. Donald Trump has already announced that he'd be tapping Palantir to build a database on every single American. He's going after the most vulnerable people now. But there's nothing stopping him from making you his next enemy.